Hey, I'm Rob Jones, and in this movie I'm going to give you a rundown of Novation's newest controller keyboard, Impulse. Having worked with all of Novation's keyboards to date, I was keen to find out how they'd evolved and which features have been brought over from the flagship SL series and Novation's MIDI controlling protocol, Automap.
Just to bring you up to speed, Automap has been leading the way in MIDI controlling technology since it was first released in 2006. Its concept is quite different from other controllers you can buy, as it's actually a software-based system. In other words, you boot up a software app called the Automap server on your computer, and this server then connects to your music software and gets set up in the preferences, allowing different Novation controllers to be connected and disconnected and used simultaneously to control your DAW, as well as external plugins, with an editor window showing you all of the controls that are currently assigned.
The way Automap works is slightly different from one music software platform to the next, with some having better controlling of instruments and effects than others. Also, with most music software having built-in automatic MIDI control with most hardware services these days, the hardware manufacturer's own systems are becoming less of a bonus, and perhaps an unnecessary overcomplication for the majority of people.
Let's check out the keyboard's front panel then. First up, on the left, we have a row of 9 faders, so 8 bankable ones and a master fader, with a row of buttons directly below, which all have LEDs to show whether they're on or off. The switches to the left control whether the faders and buttons are in mixer or MIDI mode. Mixer mode is where they are pre-assigned to your DAW, and once you've selected Impulse in the preferences, you can use the faders to control track levels, and the buttons to mute and unmute tracks. There's also a solo button which I was pleased to see, so you can switch the buttons to solos for listening to individual tracks in your mix. MIDI mode then makes all of the controls freely assignable, so you can map them to whatever you like, using your software's built-in MIDI learn mode. We're looking at the 61 key version here, by the way, which is identical to the 49 key one. The 25 key model, however, has only a single fader and button. As far as knobs go, Impulse has 8 encoders, which work in a similar way to the faders, in that there are 2 switches once again to set what they control. The switches are a little more complex here though, as you can either have the plugin switch active, where the encoders can then be used to automatically control instruments and effects in your software, or the MIDI switch active, where the encoders can be manually assigned to whatever you want once again, or you can press both together, after which they can be used to control a number of different mixer controls, like panning and sends. Below the encoders, we've got the obligatory transport controls, and then, to the left, there's the large LCD screen, with various settings buttons just underneath. These are pretty well labelled, so it's relatively easy to work out what they all do. Just in case though, there's a handy help mode that you can activate by pressing the data up and down buttons together, after which the screen displays a scrollable explanation of any controls you adjust. Last but not least, we've got the killer feature at the end here. This is definitely the most exciting thing about this keyboard, and the touch of class that makes this controller one of the best on the market. The 8 illuminated pads can be used in a number of different modes, depending on what you're controlling. First up, they're regular drum pads, so can be used to bash out beats. However, you can press a button to turn on roll mode, where pressing and holding a pad then creates a roll of whatever speed you like. Or you can press the ARP button to activate an onboard arpeggiator, which is then controlled using the pads. So if you're playing a synth, you can simply turn on the ARP, hold down a chord, and then you have each arpeggiator step set by the pads, so you can then turn them on and off as you like. Plus, the steps' volumes are even controlled by the strength with which you press them, with the brightness of the pads indicating how loud they are. And finally, if using the keyboard to control Ableton Live, which is most suited to do, you can press both buttons together to activate clip launch mode. So you can then play or stop any clips in the currently selected scene, which is awesome. Another cool thing I should mention on the front panel here is the shift button, right next to all the mode switches, which are used to change the keyboard or individual control settings. The Shift button can be held down to allow a second function for most buttons to be engaged. For example, you can hold it down and then press the fader switches to bank up and down your software mixer. Or press the encoder switches to scroll to additional pages of encoder mappings to change their function. Or press the keyboard transposition switches to select different tracks on your software mixer, which is another useful one when controlling remotely. When I first saw the keyboard, I did think it had weighted keys, so I was quite excited by that prospect, only to find that they were in fact semi-weighted, and pretty similar to their other keyboards. So they're not as nice to play as my Korg stage piano still, which does feel more like a piano than a keyboard, but I do prefer them to the previous keyboard design, with the larger key size and better response being a definite improvement. Plus, not being weighted makes the controller lighter and more portable, not to mention more affordable. And the keys also have the ability to transmit aftertouch, which is a huge bonus for creating extra performance effects. So what about more comprehensive control of external plugins then? Well, this is where Automap normally steps in, allowing you to connect directly with each plug and easily set a default mapping for it to have your own instant layout. Although this has been implemented with Impulse, it only allows you to map the encoders and not the faders or buttons. And there's no way of using it at the same time as controlling your DAW. Meaning that, in Live at least, you have to deselect Impulse in the software preferences, and therefore deactivate all the features I've mentioned so far if you want to do it your own way, which is hardly worth it, especially as Live allows you to configure the plugin parameters you want to map anyway, which then automatically map to Impulse's encoders, making the built-in control almost as good.
I'm told that future updates may include the ability to easily switch between these modes, but I think it was thought that the majority of Impulse users wouldn't really want extensive control of their plugs, and I think that's probably right. If you want a controller that literally morphs into each of your soft synths when you load them up, so you can get really in-depth with your instruments and have hands-on control, which is more for tweaking away in the studio, then you'd be better off going for the SL Mark II series. However, if you want a cool keyboard with some excellent performance features and pretty decent control of your DAW, then Impulse is the one to go for. It's perfect for performing with, particularly if you use Ableton Live, and is definitely going to become the centerpiece for my new live setup, which I'll be launching later this year. Bye for now.